This week, yes, there will be a show. The show must go on. Sometimes life gets in the way. Michael Santarcangelo could not join us today. He's okay, by the way, in case you're wondering. He's doing totally fine. Matt Alderman and I are going to cover the show today. We are going to lead off the first segment talking about a few stories that Michael had provided to us for the show, including how leaders should stop avoiding the hard decisions, making smart people make, being in motion versus taking action, 10 things successful entrepreneurs never tolerate, the negotiation edge, and marketing's hidden treasure. Better CPE can unlock millions to fuel growth. And then we'll do the tracking security innovation segment. And I am super excited about this. Matt and I get to cover the Tenable IPO, which happened last Thursday, and news from Sophos, Fortinet. We'll cover some recent things happening with CA and the potential acquisition. Proofpoint in Imperva, which is very interesting, have some fiscal financial results to cover, which Matt and I promise you have an interesting take on that as well. And Imperva makes an acquisition. All that and more on this edition of Business Security Weekly. This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for actionable insights on leadership, communication, and innovation. Get ready for Business Security Weekly. Brought to you by today's determined attackers easily bypass even the most advanced network defenses. Trying to ramp up staff to detect their backdoors can cost thousands of dollars and take months, even years. With Active Countermeasures AI Hunter, we enable junior analysts to detect even the most advanced backdoors in a matter of hours. Sign up for a demo and purchase our product today by visiting activecountermeasures.com/BSW. Active Countermeasures. Make every analyst a hunter. Are you getting pressure to improve your data security? Would you like a faster, easier, better way to patch? Then you need to check out Automox. Automox is a cloud-native platform that patches and manages every endpoint, even remote servers and devices, including Windows, Mac, Linux, and third-party software from a single dashboard. Improve your cyber hygiene, reduce your attack surface, and save 90% of the effort you spend patching. Automox, your patching system of record. Do you have a website, an external presence, employees, an office? Any of these things can be compromised and attacked. How are you defending your assets? Have you penetration tested your public assets? Start 2018 by taking a proactive approach to securing your vulnerable areas. Black Hills Information Security has been helping companies find their weaknesses since 2008. Email consulting at blackhillsinfosec.com and see how they can help you sleep better at night. Welcome, everyone, to Business Security Weekly. This is episode 94. Very happy to be here. Sad that Michael Santarcangelo can't be here this week, but excited to cover the show, including some content that Michael provided, and always excited to welcome one of our illustrious Security Weekly hosts, Mr. Matt Alderman. Matt, welcome.
Thank you. Back from Singapore. I'm back on time zone. That's good.
That's awesome. You recover quickly. You did a lot of international, still do a lot of international travel, Matt, so that's good.
Yeah, a bit. Not as much as I used to, but yeah, still a bit.
Well, it's good to have you back here stateside, Matt, and I'm excited that, well, you and I get to cover the Tenable IPO in the second segment of the show, which should be kind of interesting, as we both used to work there and may or may not have a vested interest in Tenable doing well with their IPO, which is good. I'm excited for Tenable, and I can't wait to dig into it a little more and compare and contrast some other interesting, I think, results from other companies that, maybe have already gone public and see how they're doing. I'm starting to get more into this whole, I think the Tenable IPO really made me pay attention to the market overall a little more. But Matt, you're the expert in that area as far as I'm concerned. So
I'll do my best.
Yes. I think our survey is done. Our good friend Dan from Straight Talk, I think, is who's helping us analyze the results from our survey. It could be done, or it could be that I've screwed things up so massively on our website that it's not working. I mean, either of those are very likely. If you're experiencing issues getting to anything today, on Monday, July 30th, especially just wait a little while. Things should settle out. And then after that, if you do notice something, some listeners have sent us email in already and notice things are broken. We're in a major kind of migration off of some infrastructure onto some new infrastructure. So if you notice anything broken, just let us know. If there's especially legacy things that you're like, I can't get to this anymore, definitely let us know, because I'm not sure how much of that legacy content I'm going to keep around. So keep an eye on things for us. It's greatly appreciated as we are in the middle of a server migration. So I think our survey has officially ended. And, we'll have more surveys maybe with a slightly different focus to come. Now, make sure you come check us out at the Pool Cabana at Black Hat and DEF CON. We've got the Cyber Hero Adventures comic book that we'll be distributing alongside Gary Berman, who's the author of that and made appearances on this show and Paul Security Weekly. So check that out. We'll have things for sale in the vendor area. We're taking briefings. We're doing sponsored interviews. In fact, if you or your company is interested in a sponsored interview, it's not too late to sign up for a sponsored interview at Black Hat. We'll be doing all new trivia series, all kinds of things. Look for us in the pool area at Mandalay Bay and Caesar's Palace in a very short while. In about a week or so, we'll be out there. So, Matt, you'll be out there. You'll be helping us out. You'll be out there. Now, does Layered Insight have a booth?
No, for Layered Insight, it's not really our crowd, right?
Yeah,
We're
okay,
more working with the dev guys and the application security folks, not really our event. So I'm coming out to help you, and I'll probably do a few Layered Insight meetings, but
right.
I'm really there to help you with interviews.
I love it. We get Matt's full attention. It's going to be so much fun. I get to work the floor with Matt. It's going to be awesome. And Matt, we're doing briefings of separate companies, a whole list of separate companies, which that'll be interesting content, certainly for the show.
Yeah, we're over. Yeah, I think we're over 100 requests right now. I've got a couple more in my inbox today that I got to take a look at. But yeah, we've gotten requests for well over 100 interviews. So yeah, we got to go through and get as many scheduled as we can.
That's right. And we're cherry picking them, which is nice. The ones that we're interested in, which I think is really cool. So, okay, let's dig into our stories for this week. Leaders should stop avoiding the hard decisions. And tell you, being in a leadership role, it's all about decisions, and lots of decisions, and some harder than others, as you can attest to, Matt.
Yes, very much so. We've had to make a few hard decisions in the past as well. And sometimes they fall your way too. So you never know.
That's right. It's every day there's some decision making happening, and I think that John Strand and I have actually talked about, like, at what point do we hand off responsibility to some of our employees? Because previously we've covered articles here on Business Security Weekly that you should reduce the number of decisions that you have to make in any given day. There are some entrepreneurs, Matt, that really take this to a whole new level, in that they lay out their outfits and structure their clothing for the week so that they don't have to make as many decisions. Like, they actually buy specific clothing, lay it out the night before, so it's like one less decision they have to make for the day. I mean, that's extreme. But then I also like to empower my employees, and John Strand has like the great words of John Strand wisdom on this. He's like, as long as you're trying to make the right decision and you put some thought behind it, I trust you to make decisions. Like, just don't screw it up. I added that last part, but you have to empower your people who you trust in your organization to make some of those decisions. And I think that also helps, in addition to maybe your wardrobe, you to focus on some of the more difficult decisions, perhaps, the bigger decisions that could have far-reaching impact.
Yeah, and this one ties into another article on motion versus action. And it's really moving things forward to an outcome. And that means sometimes you have to make these hard decisions, right? And so when we talk about that article a little bit, it ties in here, is in order to move a company forward or to get a desired outcome, you will have to make hard decisions along the way. You cannot avoid them,
Mm-hmm.
because by avoiding them, you're not going to get those desired outcomes. You're just
Right.
going to continue to kind of spin as a company. So
Yeah, you'll
it's
just
just
be in
something you have to
motion,
be.
in most likely a circular motion, right, for some
Yes.
time and not actually moving forward. I completely agree.
Yeah, exactly right.
And at some point you got to come to that crossroads and, for better or for worse, pick a direction. And hopefully there's some, other factors you're taking into consideration and you're not just flipping a coin. Although those of us that have been in positions to make those decisions, sometimes I'm like, this could go either way. Like, let's just pick a direction and go with it. And you deal with the fallout from whatever direction that you've been in or chosen to go in, right?
Yeah, I mean, the concept of fail fast is an interesting one, right? Is that you're making a decision, but if it's the wrong decision, fail fast and then make the appropriate course adjustments. By not making the decision, you don't know if it's the right or wrong decision, and so you're not, figuring out how to move things forward. And so even if you make a hard decision, you make the wrong one, fail fast
Yeah,
and
make
then
it
go ahead
early.
and make the appropriate adjustments.
Right,
Yes.
right. Completely agree. Yeah, we've been a lot of those kind of style decisions have been happening lately, especially here at Security Weekly, right? And more about adjusting our internal processes, what tools we use, and sometimes I'm like, let's just try it and see if it works. Like, we can weigh the options until we're blue in the face, and that just leaves us in that motion phase, or we can pick something and try and go with it. And if it's the wrong decision, well, then we back up and try something that maybe will work better.
Yeah, facts help, but it doesn't mean you're always going to make the right decision at the end of the day.
Right. Now I love these articles that, I guess you could kind of call them clickbait, and it's tough to weed through. Michael does a great job of weeding through the clickbait into articles that actually say something that's meaningful. And so sometimes you might read some of these headlines and think, oh, well, that's clickbait. But no, Michael is validating these. In this one's, 10 successful things entrepreneurs never tolerate, and we see these, I'm sure you see them too, Matt, right? Like 5 things every successful entrepreneur does, and it's like they work out every day. It's like, I get that. All right. I understand, to be a successful entrepreneur, you got to work out every morning at 5 a.m. I mean, if you read these articles, that's one of the primary conclusions, Matt. Have you seen these articles that say that?
Yeah, all those personal habits
Mm-hmm.
influence kind of your drive to be an entrepreneur and to be successful in that kind of space. Yeah. It's like my wife and I getting up every morning going, okay, it's time for our walk, right? The
Right.
2.5 miles around the loop or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's something you just do every day.
Right. And I think, routine is certainly a big part of that. But Matt, what is this article trying to dig into in terms of things that entrepreneurs don't like, which I think is an interesting spin on it? Is usually it's about the habits of entrepreneurs. These are things that entrepreneurs don't like.
Yeah, exactly. And if you go down the list, it's a little interesting. The first one is inaction. We were just talking about this whole make hard decisions, action versus motion. And the first one on this list is inaction, which means you're not making those decisions, right? So that these all tie together. Some of the other ones are kind of they're okay, like being average. I mean, that's kind of a hard one to kind of measure that and say, well, I'm average. Am I really average?
Well, Matt, and just to go back to the inaction one, right? I think this is about empowering your employees as well and allowing them to move forward. Be like, yes, that's the right direction. Like, go make the decisions that allow you to follow this path. And I think as, a leader, you have to set the overall direction and then, pass some of that responsibility off to people who you trust to carry out your vision, right? And that allows you to then do a lot more focusing and not have to make every decision along that journey. Like a silly example, we're ordering, and Matt, you've done this too, right? You're ordering all of your marketing materials for a conference. I've passed that to the team. I'm like, I think we should have something like this. Here's the goal. Should get our brand out here in this way or whatever. I'm like, go have it. And they're like, well, does the logo look good here? I'm like, nope. I trust you to make all those decisions that are going to come after this to follow that path and make it happen. And no, thankfully, when we go to Black Hat and DEF CON, we've got awesome stuff to give away, awesome stuff to have for sale at our vendor booth as well. But that was one where I had done that so much in the past, and the team was definitely ready to take full on that responsibility. So,
Right. But yeah, and you need to let the team do what they can do, right? You can't do everything. Even as a small company in Layered Insight, I mean, there's,
right.
we're all running around like chickens with our heads cut off, doing stuff to keep the company moving in the right direction. It's not one person; it can't be.
Yeah. And
But
go ahead,
there's a
Matt.
couple. Oh, sorry.
No,
I
I
was going to
didn't.
say there's a couple really good ones in here
Mm-hmm.
that I think are important. Um, Number three is habitual negativity, right?
Mm-hmm.
As an entrepreneur, it's all about optimism and being positive, and you're trying to take an idea to market and grow a successful company. So negativity. Number five, dishonesty on this list is a killer, right? I mean, if you cannot trust and have honesty across the team, it will kill any kind of startup out there from right from the beginning. And so those are a couple there. Then it leads into toxic relationships, which kind of is part of this whole dishonesty
Mm-hmm.
loop. Those are really, really good ones in this article. And then I went down to the bottom. And number 10 is acting out of anger. And this is probably the one I'm the worst at, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm so competitive
Yep.
that when when something happens, you're like, God dang it, I'm going to do it anyways. um, so number 10 is probably the one that I have the hardest time with.
No, yeah, and for me, I don't know if it's so much anger as it is spitefulness sometimes with me, right? Because I'm just like, well, I want
Yeah.
to do that just to like prove everyone wrong. I want to do that because I want to see I can do it. But it's like you can't run your business based on anger or spitefulness. Like it doesn't work that way, right? And there's
Yep.
I think it's a Winston Churchill quote that's like, if you stop to pay attention to every barking dog, along the way, you'll never get where you're going on your journey. And I think a lot of these things are about that, about keeping the mission for your company, taking your vision in a positive direction, and just kind of letting go some of those other things that might slow you down, including people who are dishonest or acting out of anger or spitefulness, certainly. So
Yep.
yeah, I
Yeah.
get
Agreed.
that. So this next one was about negotiating, which is kind of interesting, as my wife is part of a union here in the hospital, and those of you who've been paying attention to the news here, and there's a lot of negotiating going on, and in my assessment is it's not going very well. And I think about some of the things that I've learned about negotiations, and you run into some of those times where like it's way beyond my skill level. I'm like, wow, this is just going bad. Like, is it going bad on purpose? Of course, this comes from the Black Swan Group, which has never split the difference. Chris Voss, his company, which is one of the best, I think, books on business or negotiation, or just a book everyone should read to get through life. And so his blog has been really great. And this one's, about asking the how and the what questions, which are important to his, kind of theory in negotiating. Have you read the book, Matt, or read this article?
I haven't read the book. I read part of this article. And the interesting part of this article is we say yes a lot, right? Is when we're in these discussions. And what he's saying is you're lying. And how do you find out whether a yes is a lie or not? And it's digging into asking the next question is, okay, how do you do that? Or what is that? So that they have to clarify the yes, because a yes by itself could mean a whole bunch of things.
Mm.
And what he gets into a little bit here is asking that next level question, because as a society, we're so used to yes being a positive thing. We're like, okay, off to the next question.
Right.
And here he's saying, no, you're being lied to when they say yes. You better ask those next set of questions to understand, did they really mean yes, or are they just pulling your chain? And that's what I liked about this article.
Yeah, and in negotiations, Chris will teach you about trying to understand, having empathy as being probably the most important thing you learn from Chris's book, and how to, like, empathy is something you can learn how to do better. And it's completely different from sympathy, right? But these questions that follow a yes response are to really dig into what is the other person's motivations, what do they really want, and by uncovering and exploring what that yes really means is uncovering the other person's intentions. And all of the examples that Chris gives in his book is negotiations completely improved in a positive way once Chris could understand what the other person really wanted. And what they're telling them, as Matt alluded to, is usually a lie. And Chris's techniques allow you to dig into what that other person wants, which is a really powerful form of negotiating or a negotiating skill to have. And it's one of the things. And the other person, like, in Chris's world, someone's being taken hostage, right? But in your daily life, you're likely, in an everyday basis, not negotiating with someone who's taken someone hostage or kidnapped someone, right? You're likely on the other side of some kind of business negotiation or business deal. And sometimes people just do that unintentionally. And I find that Chris's resources really help me uncover, like in our situation, for example, when we work with a partner or a sponsor here at Security Weekly, how do we dig into, like, really what do they want to get out of the program as an example, right? So I'll use Chris's kind of indications so that I want to truly understand, what they want out of the program, what their goals and expected outcomes are, and we'll ask that explicitly. And that's important when you're on the other side of that, Matt, in your position, when you're talking with customers, it's the same thing. I mean, you're not necessarily you are in a negotiation, but even before that stage of negotiating price, which is what we always think of as negotiation, the first part of that is trying to figure out if you can solve their problem, and getting what that problem is out of your customers, right, is maybe, and it's not that they're intentionally hiding it, but these questioning can help you pull that out of your customers. Have you thought about using that in this way?
Yeah, because they may not know. I mean, that's one of the big challenges in the security startup space right now is, do customers really know the problems they have and how best to solve them? So you've got to be able to answer a set of ask a set of questions to kind of probe in and really kind of get to the root of, what is your problem, and does this solve it, or is it completely something else? And it's hard to do. This is why I do the interview process with most of my clients when I do anything on the advisory side. It's the same process I ran the Layered Insight guys through when I joined, which is really starting to understand what they believe the problem is, why their approach is unique or different or better. What is that value you can provide back? It takes a while to extract that out. Luckily, I have a set of questions that help me do that. But yeah, every single customer you have to kind of do the same thing for.
Right. I think our questions are probably pretty similar, Matt, because we talked about going to Black Hat and doing the briefings, right? We're going to use similar style of questions in our briefings, and likely our question sets are pretty. We'll have to compare notes before we go to Black Hat, Matt, but we have a very similar set of questions and different ones for different situations, whether it's a phone screening or, depending on what the situation. If it's on the Black Hat floor, you kind of trim those back, and you got to pick and choose like what you might want to go after in terms of information. And it depends on who you're talking to, right? Like, to kind of transition this into Black Hat, when Matt and I and others from Security Weekly, when we go walk the floor, we know from previous experiences that likely there's going to be a higher percentage of salespeople on a show floor than any other persona in that company. So I like to structure my questions around, well, what does a salesperson typically experience, and what do I want to know about their experiences that can help me? So I ask them questions like, well, so when you close the deal, even before they've started using it, what if they say, what was the deal closer for them? What was that, like, one thing that you did really well that the customer called out to you and said, like, we had our selection of half a dozen vendors, but we chose you because what's that number one thing? And usually the salespeople, they know that, right? Because they want to use that in their next sales deal if they're good, and most people do. So there's a whole bunch of questions like that, and we'll be releasing sets of our questions as well. But Matt, I assume you similar style of questioning.
Yeah, and you're going to see sales guys, you're going to see marketing guys, right? So I also want to understand the real message behind the message on their booth, right? Because vendors use a lot of the same terminology, and it's extremely confusing to customers, by the way. Anybody watching this who thinks you call yourself an AI threat intelligence company, that people understand what that is, They don't. Okay.
Hmm.
And everybody uses these same terms over and over and over again. So what I want to do is I want to peel the onion back, and I really want to understand, what is it that you do? What is the real value behind that? I know what you call it, but what does it actually do?
Right.
That's a whole different set of questioning that I want to get from the folks when I interview them as well, because I'm trying to cut through the noise. Because there is a lot of noise out there with people saying the exact same thing over and over and over again. And how do you differentiate one vendor from another? If you don't understand some of those deeper questions and kind of basis for the message, it's going to be hard for you to shine with your customer base. And that's what I like to dig into.
Yeah, and usually if you ask like that vendor in particular, like, are you an AI threat intelligence company? They're like, yes. And there's your yes response that you got to dig into. And sometimes I'll take the opposite approach and I'll say, so you're like something similar to threat intelligence, and they'll say no, like right away. So you can kind of dig at what they are by trying to solicit that no response, which is something that Chris also talks about in Never Split the Difference. It's so much fun to put these in practice in the next week or so. I'm excited.
We'll
Uh,
have fun.
so, Matt, this last article was about some marketing. Better CPE can unlock millions to fuel growth. First, what do they mean by CPE, and how does that relate to growth?
Yeah, so they're talking here about consumer promotions and engagements, trying to get customers to buy their products versus the traditional way of doing it, which is advertising and trade dollar spend. And what they're analyzing here is these promotions and in customer engagements actually have more effect at a lower price point than some of the advertising that they're doing or the trade shows. And look, I can tell you from a show side, you get trade show fatigue. I was just over at RSA in Singapore. In my opinion, it's shrinking. It looks smaller. The booths are closer together. There are major security vendors not at that event. And it's a little concerning to me because that event, for example, had been self-sustaining and growing over the past few years as I've been attending. But this year, going over to Singapore, it looks smaller, right? So I think there is a level of trade show fatigue. You're not getting the return on investment. And they're saying, look at these customer promotions and other customer engagement activities, doing your own customer events and other things. It's a much bigger bang for the buck when it comes to generating leads, generating revenue, than just these broad advertising or trade show campaigns. So I thought it was very interesting because I'm seeing some of the same things.
Yeah, I've have a lot of thoughts and opinions on how you can get value out of a trade show, and also where I think there's a misconception about value. But I think is if you know all of the pieces, you can make the most out of the trade shows that you do, and use your other marketing activities to enhance your presence at a trade show. And I think that it also depends who your target profile is and how you structure your product. I've read articles from companies that were like, well, we made sales right on the show floor. I'm like, well, first of all, if your product is positioned to be that easy of a deploy and that price point where they can actually sign the deal right there, like a company that's selling, $50,000 plus product that requires a lot of integration to multiple teams to support it, probably not going to make that deal on the trade show floor. However, if you can sell a device that's $5,000 and $10,000 and can have some immediate impact and is easy to deploy, yeah, you can make that's awesome. If you can make sales right on the trade show floor, absolutely you should do trade shows. But that's not everyone, right? And it all depends on how you're going to target your persona. And I think that's one of the most challenging things on the trade show floor is how do I get the right people from the right industry with the right problems and speak to the right person? How do I get that person to my booth? That is my target profile in all the things, not just the industry or the size of the company, but they have to have the problem that you're solving, right? And then that person has to be a decision maker. How do I get those people to the trade show? And so we could do a whole segment, Matt, a series of segments on trying to get the most out of the trade show.
Yeah, and it's tough because the way most people measure trade show success is number of leads, cost per lead, and try to track that from a revenue side. And again, you may not see your buyer persona there. The
Mm-hmm.
company might be there, but the buyer you're trying to sell to may not be there, which is why you asked the question about Black Hat and Layered Insight. It's not our buyer persona.
Right.
So why would we be there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you have to hand sell to everyone that comes to your booth, right? That's the other hard thing that I think a lot of vendors underestimate is they want to go make a presence and get their messaging across in the trade show floor. And what I think that sometimes they don't realize is that everyone that comes there is going to, like Matt's question, they're going to see your message on the thing and they're going to ask you, what does that really mean? So you have to explain it to everyone that comes to the booth, right? Whereas there's lots of other things you can do to get your message out there, let the masses consume that so that maybe when they do come to your trade show, they're already at a certain place. And, you know, it's a touch point. Then we can talk about funnels if we wanted to and all that stuff. But I think to Matt's point, sometimes you don't know like how much impact did a particular activity like a trade show, how much did that contribute to some kind of sale? And sometimes that can be a really hard thing to figure out.
Yeah, definitely. It's a really hard metric to track. And that's why you see some people saying, do we really need to do that? It depends, what you're trying to accomplish. If it's brand awareness and recognition because you're getting ready to go public and you just want to make sure you're top of mind, look, Qualys did a lot of that before they went IPO. They had a very successful IPO, and it worked for them. Others haven't had to go to that extreme. Tenable was, I think, a gold sponsor at Singapore, where I was on stage keynoting for them when I was there. So they've dropped their membership down and they were going IPO at the same time of the event. It wasn't a big component for them. So it varies company by company too.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, with that, we're going to take a short break, come back and talk about tracking innovation. Lots of really cool announcements from a lot of companies that we'll go over. So stay tuned.